Okay. So the first announcement of the day is that tomorrow is the last day to withdraw. So if anybody needs to get out of a course, this is the time to do it. All right, and then there's some form that you fill out and submit for that. And if you're doing it, I would recommend sort of saving the sent email so you know it's, or if you get a response or whatever, make sure you keep some record that you filled it out, submitted it. Anyway, okay. So that's just a generic, not necessarily about this course announcement. Okay. What else? Announcement reminder that we have a test on a two-part test Tuesday and Thursday of next week, labs 8 through 15. And then a new announcement of on Tuesday, in the first section of this class, I had started what I usually do, hello world, and then throw in, edit my files of hello world to make the running program. So I supply on my website the code and bring that in. And, but I couldn't even get a working hello world on Tuesday. And then in this section, I just work from my laptop where I don't need to edit the Gradle. I can work with the 31 and have a hello world. Whereas in the lab, I had to switch from 31s to 30s. And then that trick stopped working for me on Tuesday. And then nobody reported on Tuesday that they had the same problem, but a student reported today that he had the problem. And I found, at least this worked, as far as hello world, it worked for me in a hello world. But I added, so this is again the Gradle, and they're my, used to be 30s, now 31s. And then I added this sort of bold part. And then I got back to where the hello world was working. Okay. So if you're on the lab computer, you might find all of a sudden that your hello world doesn't work. You had the same problem. What's that? Okay. For me, it was a timing thing. It wasn't about any particular lab. Because I didn't even get hello world, so it wasn't about any particular code I was running, but something changed, I don't know, behind the scenes in what IT has installed, or they updated something, I don't know what. When I'm on my, let's say, when I'm on my laptop, I don't have to edit the Gradle at all. When I'm on the computers here, I have to change 31s to 30s, and that worked until recently. But this little thing worked for me, and at least this afternoon, this worked. So let me know the status of that. All right. Laptop, okay. Again, for me, it was a hello world thing. It didn't have to do anything with any particular code, but all right. Modules, okay. So this week's material is not on the test. So if you're when it comes time to work in the lab, don't worry about new stuff if you have not come to terms with the old stuff. Get the old stuff going first. All right. I'm going to show you two new things today, but I'll ask if there are any questions. Lab 10. Oh, Lab 10 was checkboxes.
How do you go about to have like one checkbox?
Well, in design, you just drag one out.
I had a problem with it. Like I would just like I add it, and then on the flow part, I will connect it, but then it would stop working.
It would stop.
Connect it, and then I had to do something else. I had to search some other things. I added it dynamically.
Oh, okay. Shouldn't,
That was going to do the other way. Just add it and then
shouldn't have to add it dynamically. Come on. Empty, okay. I should be able to just drag a checkbox out, give it an ID. I'll probably grab a checkbox, a text view, and a button, and
what it is like you said, there's like a set of checkboxes, and then add a single checkbox. So a set of checkboxes added as dynamic. And then as soon as I add the other single checkbox, like I just barcode it and just like drag it and say that there's a checkbox there, and then I connected it to the interface. It didn't work. Like, as soon as I took it out, it started working.
okay. One thing is, don't put it, if you're using, say, some container for your dynamic checkboxes, don't put it in that container. That's one thing I would recommend. I'll do one, and if I may have to look at yours in particular to sort of see what was going on with you. But what am I doing? Everything but the right thing. Now I have to remember where checkbox, and I'll just call it check whatever. There's some checkbox. And I'll have some button. Oh, I didn't constrain anything. And I'll just leave it as button, and then I'll have some text view. And just call it TV result. And I'll start it with a bunch of, okay, so I have some whatever, some buttons, something, okay. It's a single checkbox. Maybe the interaction. Is that what you're saying? It was the interaction of the single checkbox and the group of checkboxes?
And then after that, you just did how that's what I did. I guess we had to add like the prize, like that. As soon as I added it, and so as soon as I added it, it like go fine. But as soon as I connected it to the interface, that's when I had the problem. It will keep crashing.
Okay. I'm going to just work with one to demonstrate working with one because people get confused and think they have to loop over one checkbox. But it sounds like I'm going to have to look at yours, if maybe try to recreate your error, see if I can determine what it is. But I will do, since you asked me about one checkbox, I will sort of show the code for that. Because I usually get people writing me loops over one thing. So I'll just call it my check. It's not capital F and find, small f and find. I need a val. And there's going to be a checkbox. And r.id dot checkbox. And val my button. And I'm doing what? Alt enter. And I had it next to you. Then I'll have some button event with a set on click listener. And do the simple version with just the curly. And I'm going to ask if my check is checked. And else. Okay. And then I'll change the result to, I don't know, fries, and otherwise no fries or something. Let's see if that much works. That's some old, that's what we're doing later today. But so a single checkbox should just be this, asking if it's checked or not. So if it's not checked and it died, okay. So maybe I am getting your error. 19, asking if it is checked, is giving me an error. All right. Why is it doing that? Let me see what we did before. I know when you're doing the event, there's a compound button event rather than a simple checkbox event. but I thought just for the property is checked. And do I have? I don't have, I'm going to import the compound button thing. That's not going to help. That's more about the event, I believe. And attempt to invoke virtual method. Virtual method. All right, and then where was I asking if they're checked? Here it is checked. Let's check it and see. No, it's dying. I'm probably gonna have to look into it more because this didn't like 20. And I just moved the same thing down to 20. Find view by ID checkbox. Know the ID, then ask if it's checked. Seems reasonable. And it's failing for me the same way it failed for you. Say again? I had other people who, I don't think it was dynamic, needed to be dynamic or anything, but put it here instead of there. That shouldn't make a difference. That should be known by what's in there. Is that the name of my checkbox? Maybe that's not the name of my checkbox. Let me go back to layout and my check. That's not the ID of my checkbox, so that's my problem. So this is what my, so it's not that, but this and this, that was not the ID of my checkbox. I just, something popped up and I grabbed it, but it was not the right thing. So it was check, whatever. That was my ID. And now let's run that. So that wasn't a real checkbox. And so that's what it was complaining about, that there was no fries. Maybe you had the same problem as me, I don't know, but that was my problem. I grabbed checkbox, it popped up, but it wasn't a real ID of a real widget on my interface. But when I chose a real widget, the real ID of real widget, it worked just fine. I don't know if that was your problem or not. I'm going to pretend it is and move on. But we can play afterward and see if indeed that was a problem. But I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to recreate your error, and then I did, or maybe I did. All right. Any other problems that you want to confound me with? No, thank you. All right. So let's do new stuff. So the first thing is blah, blah, an alert. Okay, so I already have these. I'm on my laptops. I already have these, but download this. And this is just like if it were, I'll call it a pop-up. If we were in JavaScript, it would be an alert. It's something that's going to pop up, and it's going to be what they call modal. We've had toasts all along, and toasts sort of like appear, sort of gracefully go away. An alert is something that the user must interact with. It must at least close it or something like that. And that we say is modal, that it's just sort of like sitting there in their face, and they can't sort of get it out of the way and go back to the interface. They sort of have to deal with the dialogue. Okay. So let's find the dialogue. So file, open recent. I called it flirty because I had more reasonable names and I kept failing. This is one of those things that they keep updating. So there used to be a nice simple alert box. You think it's a simple thing, alert box, okay. And then they keep changing it because they, it's one of those, it's so simple, they have to make it better, and then they make it harder. All right. So let's run this. It's just a simple button, and it pops up an alert, and then there are two buttons on the alert, and then we will respond to the alert based on which button of the alert that the user clicks whenever it decides to pop up here. There we go. Okay, so the design, there's nothing to the design. There's a button. There's nothing hidden here. There's a button and a text view. So there's not some alert structure that I have hidden away. That is the design, button and text view. And then I say, hit the button to say, open the dialog. I have some dialog up here. It's got a title and a message, and then two buttons. And the buttons to close it are whatever and okay. So if I say whatever, that thing that I think used to say hello now says neutral. But if I say okay, then it says okay was clicked. So I know which button was clicked. I'm putting up an alert for the user to interact with, and then I know in what way the user interacted. So that is, that's the purpose of my alert. Connect to the text view, connect to the button. Make the buttons click handler. I got my text. I couldn't figure out what to say, so I just decided to quote Shakespeare. And to do that, I decided to put the Sonnet 18 over in the raw resources and just do an input stream. Okay. So there may be some generic messages that somebody else is responsible for, and they just put them in text files, and then you access them. So that's what I'm sort of modeling here. So instead of hard coding some message, I'm getting it from a file. So connect the input stream to the raw resource, read the stream, and then I have my text for my dialog. Here is my dialog. It's a material alert dialog builder, or a MADB if you want. It has a context of this. So it's one of those things and has an argument of this, which is the context. And when this doesn't work, then you try base context or application context or get context. You keep switching things and are contexts and hope that one of them works. When it popped up, there was a title. That's not what I want. That's what I want. So hello was the title. There was a message, which was the sonnet. And then there was a neutral button and a positive button. The neutral button, I controlled it to say whatever. And then it had a click function. The neutral button has a click function. And all I did in that was make the text of the text view results say neutral. And then I had a positive button and I made it say okay. There's my whatever, there's my okay. And here's the click event of the okay button of the alert. And all I do in it is make its text results say okay was clicked. But I can put more code there that I'm just keeping it simple. But so I can make an alert pop up. I can give it any title I want. I can give it any message I want. I can have neutral buttons. I can have positive buttons. I can have negative buttons. I just didn't want to be negative last night when I wrote this. But if you write .set, you can see there are all sorts of things there. You can make it like there are multiple choice, so you can get the effect of like radio buttons on here or checkboxes on here. You can get all sorts of things on here in addition to just buttons, but I was keeping it simple. You can have just one button that pops up something and they say okay and you close it. You can have two buttons for sort of a positive or negative response. You can have them make choices. There are all sorts of things you can do in the dialogue. This is just a simple, just a fairly simple pop-up with two buttons. And then finally, like so many of the other things we've done recently, if you don't say .show, it doesn't happen. So you make the dialogue and then you must show the dialogue. Okay, so that is the dialogue example. And although that's simple, it's a thing they keep changing. So I've been, teaching Android on and off for a few years now, and this is one of the things that they update and change and get rid of things, and they change the way they do it, even though it's a fairly simple thing. Okay. And then next thing I'm going to show you is a PowerPoint about a bottom navigation activity, and then I'll show you some of the code. Actually, in the slideshow, I'll show you some of the code, and then here I'm just sort of giving you the code, but you will have seen it in action in the PowerPoint, and then you have to further my example. Okay. So the PowerPoint, did I download it? Oh, I don't know. Download it again. So I'm going to edit, maybe I'm going to do the slideshow from the beginning. Okay. All right. So this is a bottom navigation activity. This is a different activity than what we've been doing. We've usually been doing empty activity. So the first thing you do is to make a bottom navigation activity is to grab the bottom navigation activity. Okay. Somebody in the first section called me over and said, I don't know what's going on. And then I said, show me how you started. And he started with an empty activity. Well, you're making your life, if you want to make a bottom navigation activity, start with a bottom navigation activity. It gives you almost everything you want. You just have to know where to put things. But if you're trying to make an empty activity into a navigation activity, then you're responsible for writing the navigation and all that. You don't want to do that. They have the navigation, you just want to take it and then make it your own, make it do the things you want it to do. So they have these examples up there. This one has the navigation already there, and you're just going to edit the parts you want. So you're going to edit what you're navigating to, but you're not going to edit the navigation. The navigation is there, it exists, it works, leave it alone. Okay. This, if we open an empty activity, we get an activity main XML. We get sort of one layout, and we get one main activity.kt. We get a lot more here. We have under layout, there are now 4 things, because there are 3 tabs. If this is the next slide, but you can see that there's sort of 3 things here. I'm probably going to call them tabs. There are 3 things. And so in the XML, there's the activity main, and then there are 3 additional fragment XMLs. So fragment is, as the name suggests, sort of part of something else. So, and that's what they call, like, you can have 2 fragments, then sort of swap one between the other, or you can have 2 fragments, then sort of both show up on the same screen. This is more of a swapping situation. But so there's an activity main that sort of runs things, and then there are 3 other activity mains, which are the sort of screens that you will make and change to have them do different things. There's a main activity KT up here, and but there are also a bunch of other, there are sort of 3, there's something called UI here, and then there are sort of 3 folders, and each folder has 2 KTs, and so we'll end up writing our code in this thing called the fragment. So we're used to editing activity main and main activity, but now we won't. Those are responsible for the navigation. The navigation works. We don't want to touch them. We want to touch the other things. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff, and you want to stick to just the hard part of this is knowing where to put your code. There's a big mess of code, where to put your code. Okay. So here are the 3 fragments. I'm sort of using the emulator, and this is just what comes up automatic. So I haven't done anything yet other than say I wanted the bottom navigation activity. And it said there was something called home, something called dashboard, something called notifications. And I'm just going to pick one of them and sort of change it to what I want. But that's what they sort of give you for free. And so that's why there were 4 things in layout, each one of these, and then an over, one to rule them all. Okay. So, okay. So down here right now, I'm in something that's under resources menu, and it's the bottom navigation menu XML. And it has 3 what they're calling items in XML. They're given IDs, navigation home, navigation dashboard, navigation notifications. They have an icon, which is in drawable. I'm not asking you to change the icons, but if you want to, you can find icons out on the internet and put them down here in the drawable. And then you can change the icons that way, and you can change the titles. I changed the titles because that's the easiest thing. I usually do the easiest thing. Okay, so the navigation is down here in menu. It's referring to these drawables for the icons, and it also gives you a place where you can edit the titles, which is the easy thing to do. So I changed my example is going to be what's called straight line depreciation. It's an accounting thing. And so I just picked the middle one. I picked what used to be the dashboard, and I've changed its title to straight line. And then when I emulate it again, now it has the same old icon, but it says straight line now. So yay for me. Okay. And I have to, so I'm working with the middle one. So I'm working with all the dashboards. So I went down to the menu and I found the item for that dashboard menu item, and I edited its title. Now I find the fragment for the dashboard and I'm editing that. So the first thing I did was there was already a text view here, which was centered. I took away one of the constraints, so it moved it up to the top. I changed its text and I changed its ID. Okay, so I gave it an ID and I gave it some text. They were actually controlling what it said in code, but I want to show you how to change it, how to do both. So I'm going to have here a design name, and then I'm also going to show you how to add to that name in code, and then therefore you'll know where to put the code if you want to put it code, and where to put it if you wanted to design. Just get rid of the code, and then either way you can control it, either in design or in code. Okay, but what I did at this stage was I just did a simple edit of this fragment dashboard. I took away one constraint. I gave the text view that was there an ID and a new text. I go over to the corresponding KT. The corresponding KT is the dashboard fragment. So they tend to do this. It's the fragment underscore dashboard goes to the dashboard fragment. And they give you a bunch of code. You try not to touch the code they give you, but you just sort of try to add to it. So here's the part where they had some code here, which you can see this comment out. They had some code that looked like this. I got, here's connecting to the interface. We don't see find view by ID anymore. It's this binding. So it's binding dot the ID. So that's my new ID, TVSL type. The SL stands for straight line, a type of depreciation. TV stands for a text view, and it's the title of that fragment, so title. So that was my ID. I'm using this binding dot is replacing the sort of get view or find view by ID is now binding dot. So I find the text view, cast it as a text view, and then here's what it says: text view dot text to string. That's what it already said. I made it say I made it say straight line depreciation. And then I'm just adding in code, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Why? Just to show you how I can change it in code and how I can change it in design. If you had it in design and you didn't want to change it in code, then you just don't write the code, or you comment out the code. If you didn't want to have anything in design and you wanted to put everything here, then you could just say, here's my text, and write the text. So anyway, okay. Fascinating, right? Okay. It's just, you got to know where the things you want to change go. I'm back to fragment underscore dashboard XML. I'm back to the layout, and I'm making like a regular old layout, the usual stuff of a constraint layout. I have a text view where I have the person enters 3 numbers. This is what's called, again, depreciation. So they enter a number that says what they're the accountant for some company. The company bought some machine, and you say what the value of the machine, what you paid for the machine. Then you say, how much you're going to sell the machine for when you're done using it. It's still worth some scrap metal or something else, or maybe some other company will want it. You'll get the newer version, and you'll sell off this version to some company who's not as rich as you. There's some salvage value. There's something, it's worth something in the end. And then there's how many years are you going to use it? And then you say that to report in some accounting thing, I don't know anything about accounting, so don't listen to me too much. But you report every year how much less the item is worth. So that sort of counts as, I think, a loss or something like that in your company. So you want to know how much it's depreciated by. And that's what this does. It finds a depreciation schedule. So I have to know how much it was worth in the beginning, how much it's going to be worth at the end, and how many years I'm going to have it. And so that's what I have. I have text views as labels, and I have edit texts for the user to enter stuff. The initial value and the salvage value are decimal inputs. The lifetime is a number input. I have a button to get the calculation done. I have another text view to put in the answers. So just a usual sort of like, I don't know, week 1 or week 2 kind of an interface, but now in this more complicated overall app. So we're now making a fragment of an app rather than the whole app. Okay, so edit the fragment XML. Stuff we know, stuff we've seen. Go back to the KT, go back to the Kotlin for that fragment. So that is under the, it still says Java, even though we're working in Kotlin. We're in the first, there are 3 things. We're in the one that doesn't say test. We're not in the main activity. We're in under dashboard, and we're under dashboard fragment. So that's a class. That's a Kotlin class. It has a bunch of stuff. We try to figure out where to insert our stuff. There's something that says root. There's something that sort of instantiates root, makes root, and then there's something that returns root. We want to be between that, between the creating of the root and the returning of the root. That's where our code goes. Here's connecting to the interface. Again, just as we saw before, not find view by ID anymore, but binding dot. That's the big change. Okay, so mostly the same procedure, but that one change in wording, that one change in syntax. So here's my button click event. Again, I'm between the creating of the root and the returning of the root. That's where my code goes. I have an on-click listener. I get the value from the user. I get the salvage from the user. I get the lifetime from the user. I'm casting it as double, and int. I'm being slightly not careful here. Not slightly not careful. I'm not being careful here, because this should be in a try catch, because this casting as a double might not work. So if I were being a better coder, I would have a try catch. But my point is not about coding something you know how to code, but about you working with this more complicated app. Okay. I clear out the schedule. There might have been a previous schedule. I clear it out. I am calculating the depreciation. For me, I'm doing straight line depreciation. You have to do a different kind. For me, the depreciation is the value minus the salvage divided by the life. And I can do it outside of the loop because it's the same depreciation every year. You have to move your calculation inside the loop because your depreciation changes every year in what you have to do for lab. I have a loop over 1 to the life. I am updating the value by subtracting the depreciation and making it the new value. And I am appending to my schedule a list to say that it was worth, after so many years, the value of the item is worth so much. And I'm casting as, I'm formatting the string for 2 decimal places because it's money. When I'm done the for loop, I have a toast. And all I wanted to show you about a toast is the weird thing about a toast is context. And so I'm asking the root what its context is. So root dot, instead of just simply this, I'm asking this thing called the root. I'm asking what the root's context is. And then here it is running. So the person entered an initial value, a salvage value, a number of years, hit the button, there's this depreciation schedule. Okay. And then I've given you the code. It's going to be an interesting test. I've given you the code. I'm not going to open it up. I just showed you where everything goes. But, well, I will open it up, but I'm not going to construct the, I'm interested in what the, did I hit it? Okay, never mind. There we go. And since this one is there's so much more structure here. There's that UI. I just sent up main rather than here are all those fragments. Down here, where was the menu? Oh, here's the menu. So there are all these different pieces, and I just decided to zip up the whole main. Okay. And then I guess let me just say what you have to do, and then I should finally shut up. Okay. You have to do just a different kind of depreciation. Okay, so you're going to do the sum of the year's digit. Okay, so here the depreciation changes. For me, I was my counter. When I learned to program, which was very, very long ago, I was automatically a counter. So whenever I count, I tend to use I, J, and K. So I is my loop counter. L was my lifetime in this. So the depreciation is a function of what year it is. And so you put that, so you have to, I calculated my depreciation outside of the loop. You have to calculate your depreciation inside the loop. And this is here, the initial value and not the value. So you have to update the value, but you also need to know the initial value. So you're going to have to grab the initial value and then make value before you start the loop equal to the initial value, and then update the value to display it, but don't update initial because that's part of the, you need to know the initial to do the calculation. When you get to the calculation, you'll know. And it's not really about the calculation, it's about the knowing where to place things. It's more about that anyway. I also gave you, though, so that you can check your calculation. I just stole a picture from the internet. And they're giving an example of, oh, here's some machine that costs 250,000. It's going to be worth 25,000 when they decide to get rid of it in 5 years. And then here is, all I was saying was the year and the value. So I wasn't doing all this intermediate stuff. But these should be the answers you see if you've done your calculation right. Okay, any questions? All right, I'm going to stop recording and then sort of walk around and do questions. Come on, there we go. Stop recording.